tensions between Israelis and Palestinians, fueled by a new surge in violence.
2 years has broken out between Israelis and Palestinians. We have another session of violence here.
Israeli settlers throwing rocks and setting houses in Palestinian neighborhoods.
The UN is expressing alarm attacks in occupied Palestinian territory.
عند معركة سند القدس كان عدد الشباب تقريبا 7 شباب.
The state of Israel is the thorn in the Arab side. Today, it is a place of conflict between Arab and Jew.
Imagine waking up to a world where the sound of children playing is replaced by the roar of rockets. This is the reality for many in Israel and Palestine today. Overnight, an unforeseen invasion occurred. Hamas fighters stormed Israeli towns, launching thousands of rockets. The result: hundreds dead on both sides. But what exactly happened, and how did we get here? The conflict between Israel and Palestine is over a century old, rooted in territorial and religious disputes. To understand the complexities of this conflict, we first need to delve into some key players and regions involved. Enter Hamas. Hamas, which basically means zeal in Arabic, is a Palestinian political and militant group founded by Sheikh Ahmed Yassin to fight and break away from Israel. They first came into prominence in 1987 when Palestine revolted against the State of Israel. This group sees themselves as defenders of Palestinian rights against Israeli occupation. According to a video by the Wall Street Journal, the attack on Israel began when Hamas militants launched multiple rockets on Israel. These militants infiltrated Israel near the Kerem Shalom crossing, an important checkpoint between Israel and Gaza. They broke the border fence and attacked the Israeli military base there. By late morning, these militants began destroying sections of the border barriers, allowing more of them to infiltrate. By 7:30 a.m., the Hamas militants were spotted in Israeli towns and cities. Multiple Israeli civilians were taken as hostages, and many more were killed. As of today, 2,300 people have been injured, and more than 700 people have lost their lives. This is what's happening, and it's absolutely heart-wrenching. To explain the whole conflict, I want to take you back in time to understand the roots of this conflict. Let's go back to the early 20th century. This is when Palestine was ruled by the Ottoman Empire. Seeing the rising anti-Semitism in Europe, a small segment of Jewish people started settling in this Ottoman Empire. Then, during World War I, entered everyone's favorite empire, the British Empire. The British wanted to defeat the Ottoman Empire, so to gather support, they made a deal with both the Arabs and Jews in this region to help. This was the very beginning of the Palestinian conflict that we see today. The British knew what both parties wanted, so they promised the Arabs independence and the Jewish people a separate country because there was a rising belief among Jews that they should have their separate land in Palestine. And this movement was called Zionism. After the British overthrew the Ottoman Empire, in order to fulfill their deal, they decided to carve out some land in Palestine and give it to the growing population of Jews who had fled Europe during and after World War II. This didn't go down very well with the Arabs, and they resisted this. This turned things extremely violent. The British were unable to control the violence, and in 1947, after 30 years of controlling Palestine, they washed their hands of the country and left it in the hands of the United Nations to control the situation. The United Nations proposed partition of the land and assigned over 55% of the land to Jews, which angered the Arabs even more. The situation escalated, and finally violence broke out between the two sets of people again, leading to the very first Arab-Israeli War of 1948. The result of this war was that the Palestinian Jews who declared themselves as the State of Israel controlled not only the area proposed by the United Nations, but also gained almost 60% of the area proposed for the Arab state. Several massacres by the Israeli forces took place in 1948, which forced 250,000 Arabs to leave the country. Israel had captured most of the land except Gaza, which came under Egypt's control, and the West Bank, which came under Jordan's control. Since then, there were more attempts to partition the land, but nothing materialized except more violence until 1967 when, after a 6-day war, Israel finally captured the West Bank, Gaza, and Sinai Peninsula from Egypt, but returned it back in 1978 under a peace treaty brokered by the U.S. called the Camp David Accord. Almost 10 years had passed after the peace treaty when violent protests broke out again, with Palestinian Arabs revolting against Israel's military occupation of the West Bank and the Gaza Strip. This was known as Intifada, a turning point in the story between Israel and Palestine, because it led to the formation of the extremist militant group, which we spoke about earlier, Hamas. In 2000, the Second Intifada erupted, which pushed Israel to leave Gaza. By 2007, Hamas had captured Gaza after a fight with another extremist group, the Fatah, which went on to control the West Bank. This brings us to today. What triggered Hamas to invade Israel, and where did things go horribly wrong? It's too early to provide fixed reasons, but this is what has been reported as of today. Israel established a blockade in Gaza after Hamas captured it. According to human rights groups, it's described as an open-air prison, which has left 45% of the population there unemployed. The condition is similar in the West Bank, where Israel has established a separation wall cutting off thousands of Palestinians from social services, schools, and farmlands. Over the last few years, tensions between Israeli settlers in these areas and Palestinians have been growing. This tension erupted after the Al-Aqsa Mosque incident recently. The Al-Aqsa Mosque is considered the holiest place in both Judaism and Islam. According to Seattle Times, in the past few years, Jews were prevented from praying inside the compound to avoid any violent protests from the Palestinians. But last week, according to The Guardian, Palestinian Jews prayed inside the mosque compound, which triggered the Palestinian Arabs. The exact motivation behind this attack is not clear, but according to Hamas spokesperson Khalid Koumi, this became the trigger point and led them to launch a coordinated attack on Israel. While they are claiming this as a reason to protect their holy shrine, several innocent civilians are getting brutally killed both in Palestine and in Israel. During war, it is very easy to point fingers to label one side as right and the other as wrong, but the stark reality is there are no true winners in wars. Economies crumble, children lose their lives, and entire nations bear the scars of conflict. Online on Twitter, you'll see people voicing their support for Palestine while others taunt support for Israel, but what they're essentially forgetting is that millions are suffering. Our hearts go out to everybody going through this conflict. Our job is to come here and educate you all on the implications and horrors of what's happening so you can be smart and make your own opinions and decisions. Wars are extremely complex in nature, but we have tried to explain the gist of what's happening through this video. That is all for today. Thank you for watching.